Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Imperfectly Better, a podcast all about documenting the real-time process of growth, learning, change, and improvement. I am your host, Cody, coming back to you after a hot minute away. I mainly needed to take some time to orient myself and the direction for the podcast, get some good structure and planning around it, as well as do some work to take some weight off of this. And I'm happy I did that. It honestly opened up a lot more potential for me. I have some AI projects in the mix and study projects around the nature of learning and the nature of intelligence. So, briefly talking about this, for intelligence, for instance, this was inspired by my explorations and studies into the love languages. For those of you unfamiliar with what they are, there's words of affirmation, quality time, physical touch, acts of service, receiving gifts, intellectual connection, and practical support. So you've probably seen all those quizzes and tests online that talk about find out what your love language is. And then you get this priority and scoring of what your actual love languages are. A while back, I had this thought of what if I don't have just one or two or three love languages that I best communicate in, but that there is a way that I best communicate and receive through all love languages. And that opened up so much for me as far as how I'm able to give and receive love. So I had this thought of what are the different forms of intelligence? How is it that those are stored and expressed? And I wanted to study those and get a good grasp and understanding of them so that I could improve my own AI tools. As I've said before, my reflection process is focused around comprehension and understanding being the end goal. So if there's any way to improve that, I'm all game for it. But that's just what's been in the mix and why I've been away. There's also been some more prioritization of rest and relaxation. I'm getting into The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom right now. Never really finished that a while back, just because at the time it felt a little too complicated for me. But now I want to get through it before the Ocarina of Time remake comes out later this year, which I am very excited for. But that's what's been going on with me. And that is not what this episode is about. This episode is about a book I've recently read, and that is Life on the Bridge by Kaelynn Partlow. You may have seen her on Love on the Spectrum on Netflix, or one of her many YouTube videos, shorts, and interviews where she talks about her experiences with autism, autism therapy, and spreading awareness and education of the autism spectrum. I, myself, am also autistic. I was diagnosed at 3 years old, but I didn't really find out myself until I was 13. It's impacted a lot of how I've been able to handle and process life, and I felt like this would be a good book to cover. After reading it, I can say that it was a fantastic read. There was a ton in there that resonated with me. So much, in fact, that I've planned a 7-episode series just to talk about it. I'll be including a link to her book and YouTube channel in the episode description for this episode and the other ones in this series, in case you would like to check out her content, read her book, or support what it is that she's doing. I love watching her shorts, and I believe that what she's doing is really great work for the autism community. With that said, I want to get into the focus of this episode: Shutdown, Overwhelm, and Meltdowns. As a kid, and well into my later years, I was prone to this issue. For me, it was always Shutdown or Overwhelm were the big ones, while Meltdowns were usually kept in private and when I was by myself. Overwhelm was probably the biggest issue for me, and would often just cause me to break down. So when I think about the book and what I read through that whole section on that, the story that pops up for me here goes back to my middle school years in one of my history classes. There was this special event happening where the school and class had been chosen to help record for an educational film. Exciting opportunity, right? Well, despite me really wanting a role in the film, all the roles had already been assigned. Mainly because I was out of class when they assigned those. On the day of filming, I was expected to remain in the front row and contribute only if an opportunity happened to appear. I was literally told to just chime in. That whole time, I was pretty much bottling everything up in me. I was not doing nothing in that chair because I was using nearly everything I had to keep what was happening inside of me from becoming visible. Inside of me, it was just chaos because I felt like I had been fully isolated and excluded. But I was simultaneously, literally, in the middle of all of the action, sitting right in the middle of the classroom and where all the recording was happening. I don't know why the teacher decided to do that, but that's how it was. I'd mainly focus in that moment on gripping my hands, and whenever I felt like things were building up, I'd drag my fingernails across my knuckles. Literally the closest thing I could do to snapping a rubber band on my wrist to bring myself back into the present. And then, after the whole thing was done, I literally withdrew into my sweatshirt like a turtle. So imagine me pulling in my head and my arms in this big gray baggy sweatshirt, and I cried. You want to know what the weirdest part of all of this was? As I was crying, there was a song that kept playing in my head. Duke Ellington's Jump for Joy. Now, if you take a moment to look up that song and listen to the first minute or two, you might find yourself going, why in the ever-loving Hades was that playing through your head? I don't know. I don't know why such a positive and cheerful song was playing in my head. But that's all to say that that is the one example that jumped out to me when I was reading Kaelynn's book. What inspired me to talk about this was this really good analogy she talked about, involving a sinking boat. She talked about the progression to a meltdown as like a boat sinking. When it doesn't have much water in it, we still have oxygen. Oxygen referring to coping skills, resources, the ability to regulate our emotions and nervous system, the ability to communicate, take action, all of those things that can help keep the boat afloat. However, once the boat takes on a lot of water, then you run out of oxygen, or it becomes harder or more desperate to get it. All of those normal skills that you feel like you could have access to are on top of the water, and you're under it. And that's how she puts it in the book. So then, when the boat is already underwater, telling someone to use the tools sitting above the surface does not make those tools accessible. This is also why she brings up this great point that the middle of a meltdown is not the teaching moment, that the teaching moment occurs after capacity returns. As I like to put it, if somebody is drowning, you wouldn't critique them on their swimming form. In those moments of shutdown and overwhelm, the water in that lake gets all muddied and stirred up. You can't see through it, no matter how hard you try. You have to wait for the water to calm down and the sediment to settle to the bottom for you to see what's actually down in that lake. That's why you can also have these moments where you don't realize a lesson, perspective, or a point you should have realized until well after the fact. A big issue for me being able to manage myself in a healthier and good way, or to bail water out of my boat and keep myself afloat, was that I had this weird idea in my head of strength. I had to be strong. I must be strong. I cannot leave. I am not allowed to stop. I must make this work, or something has to happen before I can relax. There were all of these different things running within me that made it really hard to let go of things that were sinking my boat, to use Kaelynn's terminology, as well as being able to bail the water out of my boat if it was taking on too much water. Over time, there were things that I ended up learning that gave me a much better approach to this. First was just having a good approach to mental health. I really got into shadow work, which refers to the Carl Jung concept of one's shadow self, which refers to all of your hidden aspects of self, like emotions, memories, behaviors, a lot of stuff that is normally not in the conscious mind. There's a lot that I found was leading to those meltdowns and moments of overwhelm that ended up being due to things that I could change or release. Those things being, for example, perspectives, beliefs, assumptions, rule sets I had adopted, systems I tried to operate by. There's a good chunk of this that I'll end up talking about later in the series. But for me, it had to do with that feeling that things were outside of my control or understanding, that everything was just too much, or too much was breaking all at once. On the side, and I'm not offering this as medical advice, but there was something I found that really helps me and that I love to do, which is making my exhales longer than my inhales. Doing this activates your parasympathetic nervous system, and it helps to lower your heart rate and anxiety, which is really good for just calming down in general. It's helped me out in a lot of situations since I discovered it. I like to do a pattern of inhale for 4 seconds, hold my breath for 4, and then exhale for 6. And I'll do this a few times until I feel that my body, my nervous system, and just how I feel has balanced back out. A lot of my work over the years has given me a stronger understanding of how it is that shutdown, overwhelm, and even the meltdowns happen with me and in my life, like what leads up to them. In this case, what I found is that there's an early stage, a middle stage, and a late stage. So the early stage feels like the statement, I want to get away. So for me, engaging and communicating becomes harder, my focus starts to break down, and it just becomes a bit harder for me to engage with the world. At this point, I still have the most available oxygen, using Kaelynn's term once again. So this is the best moment and point for me to pause and investigate. The middle stage feels like I have to do something. I withdraw inward. I cannot settle in one place. And I feel compelled to leave or fix the situation. Usually, when I end up at this point, what I like to try and do is reduce whatever I'm dealing with to something smaller. Break it down into parts and tackle what feels clear and manageable. And just keep working through things until the load feels lighter. And then that brings me to the late stage, like the one where it feels like I am trapped. That's when it literally feels like my awareness ejects itself from my body. I lose this feeling of connection and awareness that I have through my spine, through my body, my arms, my legs, and my heart feels heavier and tighter. It's just like I no longer feel like my body is mine, that I am moving, controlling, and piloting my body. And when I hit this point, the goal is no longer productivity or just getting through it. It is usually trying to lower the pressure, stress, and demands that I'm putting on myself, or moving myself to somewhere safe to where I can decompress, calm down, and return to a stable state. Now, this can look and manifest differently for other people. Heck, this same progression can happen in non-autistic people, which is why I'm bringing it up. I've been able to reach this understanding through reflection, awareness, and studying my own patterns and behaviors. This is also why I advocate for people doing their own work and helping people understand how to do it by showing my results from it and being able to give a good experience of it. So in this case, it would be, what does your I want to get away statement feel like? How about your middle or late stages? What do they look like to you? When have you noticed that you withdraw into yourself? Feel like everything around you is way too much, or that you feel like you're a volcano that's about to erupt? What are the patterns in those, and where do you think they come from? Those are questions and work that only you can answer. I can't do it for you. I can only tell you what things look like for me because I've already done a lot of that work myself. So, what happened after all this work? What happened the next time I ran into a situation where shutdown, overwhelm, or meltdown could happen or was happening? Well, I was at this large convention that I was at for almost a week. First time there, was excited to go, and I had built up all of these expectations of what it would be like, the kinds of experiences I would have, how things would go, who I would meet, all of that. And very quickly, those things began to break. I ended up stressed out, walking around endlessly, searching for an interaction or moment that would finally make the event feel worth it or right. When I noticed that I was really just taxing my own system, not really able to handle the event or what was happening for me there's different things I did. I would do quieter activities. I had this color by the numbers book I took with me and was doodling in. I also gave myself permission to actually leave the event and take a break and some rest. But I also began doing my normal shadow work, where I would write a question or observation, list answers, data, feelings, details. I'd draw lines, arrows, or doodle between them and ask more questions based on what I observed and saw. And I would just work to that point of understanding on what I was feeling and why. All that created clarity for me. Like what I was searching for was calm, presence, and proof that the experience was going well, that I wasn't wasting my time in being there. That really allowed me to relax into the whole experience. I was able to be more open, positive, and just have a lot more fun and enjoyment with meeting people. And I did end up making quite a few friends and felt like I was genuinely good at being a good presence around others. I felt and viewed all of that as a success and ended up ending the event on a good note. So, stepping away had helped me out a lot, but there is something I want to differentiate: protecting your own capacity and not being able to weather discomfort. Discomfort means you still retain enough capacity to understand, choose, break the task down, and respond to feedback appropriately. You're able to recover capacity and remain engaged when you reduce your capacity or step back from something in order to decompress, reset, or reorient yourself. Overload and overwhelm means those abilities are actively deteriorating, like you are losing your skill and ability to handle things. When that transforms into withdrawal or avoidance, it can be a way to eliminate uncertainty or discomfort. But those are two things that are just a part of life. You're going to find that in the process of growth, work, fitness, anything that involves you changing any aspect of yourself, whether that's your position, state, or self. That's not always the case, but sometimes it is. In the case of the convention, I used that time stepping away and working through things to be able to show up better. With leaving my job, that was a situation of genuine deterioration. The burnout I was experiencing with it had damaged my capacity, skills, and ability to where I consistently was unable to even do the basic of computer programming tasks. That wasn't just an uncomfortable afternoon where things weren't going the way I'd hoped. It was like progressive overload had resulted in this point where I was constantly in that state of overwhelm. One thing I'm proud of that I've built good skill with since then is the ability to stay with myself through those heavy moments. I find a lot of value in tackling the tougher and darker subjects and points in private. They are moments where I approach myself with compassion, curiosity, and smaller questions and work to digest that darkness, as I put it. It's like the more I work through it, the better I get at being balanced and regulated in my mental, emotional, nervous system, and even spiritual state. I would say the biggest point in closing is that it's important to understand your own triggers. What drives you into those states of shutdown, overwhelm, and meltdown? The better you are with your awareness, the better your ability is in being able to avoid those points of collapse, or even to be able to prevent water from getting into your boat. Becoming much more open as a person and handling a lot of the other things I'll talk about in this series helped to make my boat a lot more waterproof. And having confidence that my boat is less likely to sink makes sailing the ocean feel a little more like a joyful adventure on the open seas. And that is all I have to say for this episode. I will say that this was a bit of a tough one at first, mainly because of being open about the middle school story. But I know being able to talk about those experiences is important for those who need those stories, who would get value or even better understanding of themselves out of it. Or if it gives good inspiration or guidance, that's good too. I just felt like it was important for me to talk about those things. But I do hope that you have enjoyed this episode. If you are listening on Spotify or YouTube, I do see that I've gotten quite a bit of traffic on there recently, which is awesome to see. So, giving a shout out to the YouTube listeners, as well as whatever platform you're listening on. I know I'm on iHeartRadio, but honestly haven't checked that out for a bit. Not even sure if I should disclose that. But yeah, there you go. But I will leave a link to my website in the description, and I will also leave a link to the survey you can take if you would like to send along recommendations for content for me to check out, if there's a question you would like me to answer or explore, or a idea for an episode, or you just want to reach out to me, the survey is the way to go. Otherwise, wherever you're at, if you can leave a like or a review for the podcast or follow along, all of those things do help out with its growth, and I do deeply appreciate it. But most of all, I appreciate you for sticking around, listening, and hanging out with me on this episode. And I hope that you have a fabulous day wherever you are, whenever you are, and I hope to see you again sometime soon. Bye.